Joe Pill was a little frightened and furrowed his eyebrows and confused. Right after that, the dagger that Jin Tae-kyung had just pulled out stabbed him in the leg, being suddenly attacked. Joe Pill immediately received a blow to the leg and immediately fell to the ground. Jin Tae-kyung's face was now drenched in sweat, his mouth was still bleeding, his cold eyes looked wildly towards Joe Pill. A moment later, Jin Tae-kyung immediately used the dagger keep to continuously attack the opponent's legs again and again. Fresh blood quickly followed each of his stabbing and slashings, movements, and sprayed out like a stream.
Joe Pill stopped the Jin Tae-kyung attack, then angry shouted, "You bastard!" Then cracked the hand of Jin Tae-kyung. He lost the dagger, saying to Jin Tae-kyung, "You were hiding a weapon." Then using his palm to hit forcefully to the Jin Tae-kyung chest. Due to critical attack received, Jin Tae-kyung pushed back and hit on the tree again. Didn't have enough energy to stand up again. Joe Pill trying to withdraw dagger to his legs. With angry and painful expression, "Shit. To think I'd fall for this kind of tricks. How pathetic." Looking at the Jin Tae-kyung condition, he grabbing his hand and taking heavy breathing. Then using his fearless eyes to focus on Jin Tae-kyung moments. His hand was broke. Coming towards him and saying, "What a persistent bastard you are. Send my regards to the god of the underworld." His both hands with fire flame and going to attack on Jin Tae-kyung.
The members of the Jin Tae-kyung looking the bad situation of their leader and calling the group leader. On behind of Joe Pill.
Joe Pill shouted loudly, "Die." Jin Tae-kyung did not feel scared at all. He opened his eyes wide and smiled. The divine fire palm hit Jin Tae-kyung straight in the chest. This force was so strong that it caused the ancient tree behind him to break. Blood soaked the white snow. Joe Pill is still focusing his strength on attacking. Jin Tae-kyung was in extreme pain and spat out a large mouthful of blood. Suddenly Joe Pill's hands trembled a bit. He cried out in horror. He looked down at the pool of blood at his feet and stammered, "You, what the hell have you done?"
The teammates of Jin Tae-kyung behind him also surprised and exclaimed, "What is that? It can't be." It's not before two of them could finish their sentence.
Joe Pill in front of them was trembling. His face was red, as if he had been poisoned. His mouth trembled and he said, "I'm sure you're empty-handed."
Hearing that, Jin Tae-kyung smiled and said, "I've been waiting for you to have gathered your QI to the highest peak. Blockage and backflow of QI. Deviation of vital energy, which is deflection." Jin Tae-kyung smirked, looking at the sharp blade stuck in Joe Pill's stomach. Then says, "Isn't that right? You're a horrible scumbag."
There was a rumble in the cold forest. Joe Pill shouted angrily, "This is impossible." After saying that, he immediately put strength in his hands, gritted his teeth, and asked, "How could a mere brat do this to me?" One word, one strike, Joe Pill. Due to using QI to gathering strength, Joe Pill spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. He collapsed onto the white snow coughing. Joe Pill couldn't believe it and said, "Damn it, I refuse to accept this."
Jin Tae-kyung sit in one place and saw this scene and thinking himself, "It's finally over. He shouldn't be able to attack me while he's in that state, right?"
Joe Pill on the opposite side is still unable to accept the truth. He hung his head and mumbled, "This is impossible. How could it happen?" After a moment, he gathered his strength to stand up.
Seeing that Jin Tae-kyung was a little scared and looked at the two people, Han Yop and Mahimyo, he thought to himself while coughing, "I don't have any strength left. But what are those guys doing? Hurry and come help me."
Joe Pill had already stood up straight. A thick black aura was pouring out around his body. He gritted his teeth and said, "I am Joe Pill. I am the 19th successor of the divine palm of fire. One word, one strike, Joe Pill. It means I will never lose to someone like you." Having said this sentence, Joe Pill clenched his fists and raised his head to scream loudly. The scream caused the dirt, rocks, and snow under his feet to rise up.
Seeing the scene, Jin Tae-kyung covered his eyes with his hands and thought, "What is happening now? Hasn't he fallen into the gap of vital energy?" At this time, Joe Pill hair color is changing from black hair, gradually lightens. Just a moment later, the hair on his head turned white as snow. Seeing that, Jin Tae-kyung thought in horror, "No, wait. This is... He's barely holding on. He's burning up his life force. Joe Pill, do you really have to go that far just to kill me?" Body shaking with fear but still grabbing the spear. "I've already depleted all of my QI. And since my left arm is broken, I won't be able to block your attack either. I guess I have no choice but to utilize that." He remembers his quest. Death by Joe Pill or death by QI deviation. He released the QI deviation to the other deviation, saying that this is the only thing I can do for now. I'll consume it all. And the QI deviation hit the other back energy ball and it's explore the energy. Blood full of his mouth. Then he consuming the energy that flowing on his body. The yellow flashlight coming into his stomach to releasing energy. Few moments later, he consuming it and feeling strength. "I'm overflowing with it."
Joe Pill suddenly called out to Jin Tae-kyung. His two hands were divine fire palms. He quickly rushed in front of him, gritted his teeth, and said, "Damn you, die." A louder rumbles rang out in the dark space.
In the real world, in a training room, hunters who were practicing fighting monsters heard a loud noise and immediately stopped their movements on the ground. Countless pieces of debris appeared. The coach saw this and asked in confusion, "What happened? Who did it?"
To hearing that, the voice approached, "It me. I did that."
The coach frowned slightly and said, Jin Tae-kyung, 20 years old. Birthplace, Gyeonggi-do region, F-rank awakened being. Are you sure you did this?
Jin Tae-kyung sat with sweat all over his face. One on the ground nodded and replied, "Yes. That's correct. What do you think?"
What do I think? Haha, the coach asked back without waiting for Jin Tae-kyung to answer. He continued, during my 15 years here at this training facility, this is my first time seeing something like this.
The strength of this attack is equivalent to that of at least a D rank hunter. Jin Tae-kyung quickly reached for his bag. He frowned and exclaimed, "Ah, shit. I knew it. I'll be going now, instructor. I knew they gave me the wrong rank at the..."
Before he could finish his sentence, the coach interrupted and said, "But you know, this won't cut it."
Jin Tae-kyung turned around in confusion and said, "What? Why not?"
The coach said, "It's true that your skills are impressive, and it's not something that a F-rank hunter can easily pull off. However, your body isn't the same. The extent of your physical body and your mana pool is that of a F-rank hunter. Just look at yourself right now. You used that skill once and you're already out."
To hearing that Jin Tae-kyung says, "Then do I really have no other way?"
Well, you'll need to make sure you have a strong foundation in your basic skills, possess outstanding techniques, and exceptional battle sense. In any case, if you want to live a long life, I suggest you don't use that skill anymore.
Jin Tae-kyung hearing all of those words carefully.
Except for special circumstances.
Jin Tae-kyung asked curiously, "Special circumstances? Like when?"
The coach raised a finger and said, "When you are in danger. I'm sure that skill can protect you at least once." Pausing for a moment, he asked again, "In any case, have you named your skill yet?"
"A name," Jin Tae-kyung said vaguely. "I mean, I did, but..."
"What is it?"
"Might."
"What?"
Past events in the real world appeared in Jin Tae-kyung's head. In the deserted forest, he clutched the spear in his hand. Jin Tae-kyung put all his strength he had, and opened his mouth to scream, piercing with all my might. On the opposite side, Jo Pil, Divine Fire Palm, was also loudly attacking. The two sides faced each other head-on and fought each other with all his strings.